My guest this week is Ronnie Barnett. Ronnie is a founding member of the treasured rock band The Muffs and played with them for their entire 29-year career. Amongst other activities in recent years, he's utilized the skills he learned from all those years watching MTV's Weekend Rock and sometimes pops up on channels like AXS TV, commenting on all things music. He still dabbles in playing and performing, but considers himself essentially retired from music. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome to Revolutions Per Movie, Ronnie Barnett. How you doing?
I'm doing okay, Chris. Thanks for having me along on this. I'm a big fan.
Oh, thank you so much. I, as well, am a big fan of you. Also, we have the bass connection. I was just listening to side 4 of Double Nickles on a Dime before we got on here, and I just was like, time travel. I learned to play bass to this album. Like, I hadn't thought about it in a while. I mean, I just listened to it and love it.
Is that Mike's side 4? They each have a side, I remember.
Exactly. I believe, well, I think by side 4, I think it's all of them because like George's solo drum thing is side 3, I believe.
Yes.
But I could be wrong.
No,
I know that.
That would make sense, right? Side 4.
Yeah, I think at the end they're like, all right, all the cars together. But yeah. Well, I want to ask you, did you have any metal bone in your body growing up? Was metal a thing for you? Because, by the way, he picked Anvil, ! The Story of Anvil, the amazing 2008 film. But I just have to ask.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I just want to say straight up, I can't believe that this choice was still open. I really do consider this like the best. I hate to pick a best, but I mean, this is like up there, and we'll get to that. But yeah, as far as metal, growing up, my education when I was 10 years old, I was given a stack of Creem magazines. This is 1975, by a family friend, by the boyfriend of a family friend, and I just delved into those. And Creem magazine, as people may or may not remember, so dense with information. Right? You had the little small articles, you had the Robert Christo reviews, you had the big articles, the ads. Right?
Meltzer.
Meltzer. It was funny. The back ad. I mean, so I wanted to hear all that stuff. So obviously as a kid, I got into, Kiss and I had an older brother. So he had Led Zeppelin records and Alice Cooper records and Black Sabbath records that scared me with their covers. The Paranoid, I mean, I don't think he had the first one. That would have scared me too. But the cover of Paranoid terrified me as a child.
Sure, as it should.
Yes, it probably it still does. So I started getting the everything, and then your classic bands, the Who and all that stuff. So I kind of, I don't know, for whatever reason, I hung out with older people. I hung out with friends of my mom's best friend, like her son and his friends. Like I hung out with these guys, and they had they'd hang out in parking lots, and we'd skateboard, and they had 8 tracks, and they'd have Rush and all that stuff. But they also had Kraftwerk Autobahn.
Yes, the confusion was real.
Yes,
the confusion was so real back then.
Yes, and it was, and I know lines are drawn in the sand back then, and
oh, absolutely.
Things are a little more blurred now, but yeah, I kind of dabbled in stuff. So I didn't get like fully. I mean, maybe until punk, I didn't fully immerse myself. I kind of dabbled in all these scenes. So as far as metal, I didn't delve in and check out bands like Obsession or but I did like Iron Maiden early on. You know what I mean? And maybe that's because I was reading about these bands and checking them out.
You could find these records in a way that maybe you couldn't find a punk record from, the UK or Europe.
Yeah.
It was like, these were on major labels. I mean, there was a metal underground, obviously, but you could find, and it's so funny. I asked you this question, and now I look behind you. David Lee Roth jumping in the air doing splits. Ted Nugent's over there. I'm like, all right.
Yeah. Ted Nugent
open your eyes.
Ted Nugent was a legitimate rock act. This is forgotten now because the way he is now. But
yeah,
I love. There's an Ian McKaye quote where that self-titled Ted Nugent record is the best thing before punk, and it's better than anything punk.
Right.
That's
so
funny. That's a real quote. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I was I couldn't understand metal. Like I loved Cheap Trick and I liked Kiss, but those were like they're more song oriented, right? You know, and like kind of classic. But I remember buying Women and Children First, and by that point I had like Devo and some other like new wave stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember and The Cradle Will Rock being the most weird music I'd heard up to that point. Because I'd never heard a guitar do a whammy thing like that. I'd never heard all that chorus. I'd never heard someone just be like, whoa,
Yes.
yeah. And I was like, I couldn't find the song in it. It was so amazing. And to me, metal was challenging for me to grab. Well, over here, I was like, oh, yeah, I get the Residents. That's
Right.
fine.
Right.
But like this metal thing, like what is it based on? It was so funny because I didn't have the older friends or older siblings, so I missed Sabbath, Zeppelin. It was like straight into 80s metal. And it was just confusing for me.
The intro of In the Cradle Will Rock, right? Like what?
Yeah.
What is that? I don't know. But I mean, let's face it, Eddie Van Halen was a different beast than.
Right. Right. Yeah. And now you're just like, all right,
Yeah.
what was your problem? But were you into metal when you started learning to play an instrument?
Just barely. Here's the thing with me playing the bass. Like kids don't ask for basses, right? They ask for guitars, drums. I was hanging out at the local record store, as I still do. And the manager there, I would sweep up for promos, right? So this is I grew up
amazing.
I grew up in Houston, Texas. So and he hated anything new wavy or punk. So I got the London Calling promo when it came in. You know what I mean? He really didn't care about this stuff. But he was into being from Texas. There's a big blues scene there. And then this is weird to say now because I know when people hear blues, they're going to think of and look, traditional blues, it's all great, right? But when I was 15, the Fabulous Thunderbirds are one of the best bands that I have ever seen. Like I'd see these bands, like blues runs deep there, and I'm not saying like I don't know, maybe I'm influenced a little bit, but this guy, this manager, his name's Scott. He was into the blues, he was into ZZ Top, that kind of stuff, and he played the bass. So I asked my parents to get me a bass. So this would be 1978. I was 13, and I got a bit. My dad got me a bass and a little Fender amp. It was a Fender Precision bass, and it was the bass that I played through my whole career. I never found a better sounding one. I was not one of those guys that had like 20 guitars or anything. You know what I mean? I had a couple of backups that I'd bring on the road, which stopped doing that in our later years. Like I don't need a backup.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah. So I was influenced to play the bass from this guy, and he taught me my early like blues scales and stuff like that. And I basically took it from there. I ended up in a band with my high school history teacher and his brother. They were older than me. They were known as the new wave guys. You know, it was like Mr. Byers, he's got a punk band. You know what I mean? So
what was it called? What was it called?
We were called the Aliens. I don't think we'd heard of the Rocky Erickson and the Aliens at that point.
Oh, sure.
And then we became Blessed State, named after the Wire song. So my first, this is heavy stuff in high school and in Houston.
With your teacher.
Yeah, no, and I'm class 83. So my first show was our talent show, and I guess it would be 81. And we did Mannequin by Wire. We did I Found That Essence Rare by Gang of Four. We did a song called Radiation Square by a local band called the Judies, which is a huge band. And we did all day and all the night. So that was our set. And to put in perspective, the other rock band was called Illusion, and they played Hold On Loosely, which of course I love now. I didn't at the time, but yeah. So that's how I came up.
Wow.
The first song I learned how to play with that band, and basically joining that band taught me to play bass. The brother of the history teacher was the guitar player. He had a Rickenbacker. And I learned It's Too Bad by The Jam. First song I learned how to play on the bass. No, I didn't do that fancy.
Amazing.
I didn't do that fancy bass line at first. It was just basic.
Sure.
but yeah, that's how I came up, and that's how I ended up playing the bass.
Wow. Well, did you ever at some point, as you're transitioning into like punk and stuff, did you ever turn your back on metal at one point and just be like, I can't associate with this. I don't like it anymore.
I did. I sold the Led Zeppelin records. I sold the Rush records.
Right.
Thank God I kept my autograph number of the Beast Iron Maiden record.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah, I'd say so.
I did drop some stuff. We all drop records that we're regret, but I had a signed Ride the Lightning, Cliff Burton and everything, Metallica record,
Wow.
which would be worth about $2,000 these days. But anyway,
yeah, that's amazing.
I did turn my back. Well, back then, records are coming out so fast and furious. I had to get new stuff, and the only way to do that was to trade stuff, and whether it was with my friends or with to the store.
Well, yeah, and your attention span and love for a band was 3 years max, right?
Yes.
And by then you're like, I've discovered this other thing. They're no longer good anymore. Their fourth album sucks. Yeah. I'm over here. And so, yeah, you just moved fast. And so, yeah, of course, some things had to fall.
No, and I didn't need I didn't need the Rush records anymore. I need to find MC5 and Stooges and New York Dolls records because they were out of print.
Right. Yes, the search begins. You're like, okay, Creem, I'm tired of reading music and never hearing this. I can imagine what these sound like, but now I need to hear this, please. And finding access. Oh my God, yes, that's great. Well, the film is incredible. I'm assuming most of our listeners have seen it. But what's really cool about it, it was directed by Alexander Gervasi, and he has such a weird history. He was a screenwriter, and so he wrote like The Terminal, that film that Steven Spielberg directed. Right. He directed a film with Anthony Hopkins and Helen Mirren called Hitchcock. He was in a band with Gavin Rossdale called Future Primitives before they changed their name to Bush a year later. But his main love is Anvil. He called himself England's number one Anvil fan. And he met them in 82 at a marquee club show in London. And he roadied for them in 82, 84, 85. And he had a nickname. They called him Teabag, was the name that the band called him. And so it's so weird to have somebody who for decades followed a band and then decided that the story needed to be told. I think that's really rare that someone isn't like, that someone lived through their entire career. And it's a total love letter. But at the same time, it's a warts and all explosion. Maybe one of the most telling films of like a European tour has never been shown better than this film.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Were you aware of Anvil before this movie?
Yeah. So I had seen Anvil records and I'd heard of them, but I never paid attention to Anvil. Right. So when this movie came out, it came out in 2008, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. And when it came out, it was playing the New Art Theater, which is the big indie theater here. Which was something in itself. Documentaries, well, I mean, they still don't play movie theaters that much. The Sparks one is the only other one I can think of that had a theatrical run since then. But it was getting great reviews and just, the pull quotes, real life Spinal Tap, all that. I heard of Anvil, and I'm a fan of any documentary, basically, on music. That's thing I want to say about this film, too. Like, a lot of people are turned off to watching this because, I don't care about Anvil. They'd rather... People will watch a terrible documentary about Joan Jett because she's cool, right?
Right.
Like, I don't mean to slag films, but I mean, that movie's terrible.
Yeah, and often you get one chance to tell Joan Jett's story, right?
Yeah. No, I know.
And you're like, so you're like, oh, shit.
Yeah, lost opportunity. I mean, there are others that with friends that I won't mention. But yeah, so documentary on Anvil. I'm going to go see this. Yeah. So I went with friends. Yeah. So I didn't know their music. I knew the band. I knew they existed. I didn't really think about them having a 30-year career at that point or whatever.
Right.
And then when the film started and the beginning of the film is like just a barrage, right? Like of just,
yes,
you're entered. Yeah, you don't have to know anything about Anvil. You're gonna know about Anvil in that first barrage.
They're showing this festival in 1984 in Japan, massive festival with like Scorpions, Whitesnake, Bon Jovi, and then all of a sudden Anvil pops on, and they're doing their song "Metal on Metal," which I have the lyrics here. They're pretty incredible. Metal on metal, it's what I crave. The louder the better. I'll turn in my grave. Metal on metal, ears start to bleed. Cranking it up, fulfilling my need. Metal on metal, shaking the place. Blows back your hair, caves in your face. Metal on metal, feeling the grind. Up goes the hammers, a victim to find. Metal on metal's head starts to bang. Denim on leather, chains that clang. Yes.
You should do a spoken word gig, Chris, doing Anvil lyrics.
It is, yeah. I'll be the John Cooper Clarke of metal lyrics. But it's like they are like ferociously 80s metal, like underground metal, like Metallica kind of style. Their influence is definitely UK, British heavy metal influenced.
And we're laughing at them at the beginning, right? There's Lips playing with a dildo on his guitar.
Yes.
And there's that sequence with the album covers. They're like 20 album covers or whatever. I don't know if I've laughed harder than the first time I saw that in the movie theater. Like the covers are...
The thing is, the director said that at this point, when they show those album covers, again with titles like Hard and Heavy, Forged in Fire, Pound for Pound, Pounding the Pavement is even one of them. It's just like, wow. But all of them have an anvil, right?
Yeah.
They said that people still didn't believe this was real because he did say that he set this film up like Spinal Tap in terms of his choices. Yeah. Like if he's going to have the band talking about their early days and the first songs they wrote, he has them in a restaurant and he frames them just like Spinal Tap does. They go to Stonehenge.
Yeah.
They show the album covers, but it's real.
Yes. And then all the people talking at the front of the movie too, like Slash and Lars Ulrich and Tom Araya. Their quotes are so over the top, seemingly, that it seems like a parody, right? Like,
right.
No one, I don't know why they didn't get bigger. All that stuff. You're watching this, it's got to be fake. But but then we hit reality pretty quick there.
Yeah, and it's really, they set the tone so quickly, because Slash is like, everybody ripped them off and left them for dead.
Yeah.
Right. So you see how beloved they could have been at one point and how good they are for the style of metal they do. They're a good metal band,
Yeah.
Everyone's like, they just took from them. And Lemmy even says, you have to be at the right place at the right time or it can't happen, and it's, again, you don't have to like heavy metal to watch this film. If you've ever been in a band, there are things you can relate to in this film, whether you're like an indie rocker, like a punk rock or whatever, garage band. There are things in this that hit home in terms of just dreams and the reality of it and the industry and time and age. And how unforgiving like a music industry can be to people.
No, absolutely. And then as it goes on and we get to know these our characters, Lips, and we should mention, speaking of Spinal Tap, the drummer's name is Rob Reiner.
I know, it's incredible. I mean, what? The drummer is Rob Reiner, and the guitar player, they've been in it the whole time. And the guitar player is Lips, is his nickname, Steve Ledlow. And they're such a dynamic. Lips is totally like, music gives me joy and I love it and I can't see never doing it. They love each other, but Rob is also tested by the reality of being like, why am I doing this still? But there's also some interesting dynamics where Rob had support from his dad and his family in a way that Lips didn't. And there was actually, I was watching the commentary, and there's one point where Rob's dad told him, if you ever stop playing drums, I will break your hands.
Wow.
And I was like, that's pretty powerful in terms of, no, you have this and you have to do this. it's your destiny.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't know that quote. Obviously, he did have support. There's the photo. I love that scene where he's looking at the photo of him playing drums when he's young. And I want to mention the music too. The score of this film is really beautiful. Like it really enhances some of these scenes. And also want to say, because you're saying anybody in the band can relate to this, as we get to know Lips and Rob Reiner, like you say, it's a love story, and anybody can relate to this. You don't have to be in a band. Like it's about going through struggles and believing in yourself and having a good attitude. I mean, anyway, getting back to that photo, when he's looking at that photo and he's playing drums and he's just like, you see him looking at that photo. I love this too. So many scenes of this where these guys are just looking, he's looking at that photo. He's like, look at my hand. It's a blur. I'm burning, man.
Yes.
Look at that. It's great. I love that. I love that scene.
They're musicians through and through. Really early in the film, the first scene after all the people, giving their kudos to the band, they show, what they're doing current day. Like many people, day jobs. Musicians have day jobs for the majority of it. Lips is working at a catering job, taking food to schools. There's a lot of car footage of him talking about how much Anvil gives him happiness. Rob is in construction. It is funny that I still think that this happens to this day, where he's talking about how he has to explain to the people he works with about his band. And they're like, what? Oh, yeah, we were really big in Japan or whatever. And they're like, you're in a band? And I just feel like that is also a rite of passage. Just people being like, you're a musician, actually? What do you do?
Yeah.
Have you experienced that?
Well, all of my day jobs have basically been in music related. So a little bit of, I still work in a record store. So it just late, I turned 59 the other day. And just recently with us, we've hired some young people the last couple of years. And I used to I should be able to impress people with some stuff that I would lay on them, right?
Right.
Like I found Nirvana a place to stay in '89, whatever. Just, and it really, they're not so impressed. Like, look at me on TV talking about Sid Vicious, and they're not like, oh yeah, and even Clueless is getting to be an old reference now, right?
Right.
Oh, you kids in a
yeah. Well, it also
anyway,
it was such a rarity to be like, it's rare air to be on television or to be in a film or have our music heard.
So I can imagine, these jobs that they have, Lips and Rob. It's a totally different worlds, right? Like those, they're not working with rock people, so they can be like, I played festivals or Anvil. We've been around for 30. We have 17 or whatever.
They're a Canadian band, so there were people in the documentary that worked with him who were like, I didn't even know he did that. He's never really talked about it. And then it's so funny. There's even a couple people who don't want to be in the film, so they've granulated their face. He's like walking by them to just put something on a tray, and it's like on the commentary, they're like, "Oh yeah, that person did not want to be associated with me in any way." They're like, "That guy, no, I'm not giving you. Even the back of my head is not in this film."
No, true,
because Lips has got an energy that I could imagine if you didn't know him, it would be 50-50. Like, you're either going to love this guy or you're going to be like, oh God, here he comes again. Like, he annoys the fuck out of me.
Yep. There's the crazy guy with the long hair wearing the Anvil hat. Picking up the meatloaf today. Yeah. What about the lips on his dashboard?
I know.
I love it. There's so many great little scenes like that. They just cut to something.
Yeah. It's definitely somebody who knows how films are made, and even though this was their first documentary, I think the fact that they knew these cutaways are going to be essential to telling the story later. It doesn't seem... B-roll, Chris. See, I know the terms. Yeah. Person knows how to shoot B-roll. Get them in there. But there's a lot of origin stuff, like Lips walking by Rob's house and hearing drums inside. A lot of Cactus was coming out of there. And I was like, I don't know who Cactus is. I had to look it up.
It was just fun. I love Cactus. It's not an embarrassing thing, but it's funny in the movie just because Cactus. Most people don't know Cactus. Yeah,
right. That's like Carmen or a Piece is in that band. Is that right?
Yep. They're three. You should check them out, Chris.
Yeah. Are they the power trio? It sounds like a power trio.
They were a power trio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, there we go. Well, I know enough to almost hear them in my head without it. But
True.
they it's like they go through their history of just being kids together who wanted to form a band.
Can I just add that scene where they're talking in front of the house? I love that scene where somebody drives by and it catches their attention. And they stop talking for a second and you see their heads and their eyes follow whatever they're looking at. We don't know what they're looking at. That's a great.
Probably somebody with a ticker tape that, like a big sign saying, "We love Anvil."
No. And again, that's those, we're starting to love these characters at this point.
Yeah. They're really, they're, again, the comparison to Spinal Tap, I feel, is apt in a weird way. They're lovable metal dudes whose heart is in the right place, and circumstances and opportunities are now going to present themselves, and the reality of it is going to be something else. So
yeah, they just didn't make it big like Spinal Tap and then see the decline like Spinal Tap. You know what I mean? That's the Spinal Tap thing.
But yeah, the scene in the restaurant where they're mimicking Spinal Tap, again, it's so great. They're talking about their first song. And again, you can't believe this is real. The first song, Thumb Hang. And I found the lyrics to this too. Thumbs will twist. Can you resist? Beware the names on the Inquisitor's list. Trial by fire, the holy desire. Religion and rule can be so cruel. All in the name of the cross. Thumb hang, thumb hang. Word of the Pope, the loss of all hope. Manipulation is here, governed by fear. All in the name of the cross. Thumb hang, thumb hang. And you're like, they're doing it. They're doing the song. They're remembering it. And then they're like, yeah, we should do that. That's a pretty good
smiling,
song.
like, yeah, that's a good song. Yeah, and the filmmaker, Teabag, I'll call him.
Yes.
He knew how great the scene was because there was a great callback to Thumb Hang.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, even without it, it's like, this is staying in. Do you remember the first song that you ever wrote, what it was called? Or
I didn't write songs. Yeah.
Okay.
So getting back to my being in that high school band, I was in that high school band, and then my senior year, I left those guys and I went to the rival high school band, right? And
wow.
That band was a little more commercial, right, if you will.
And they were called?
We were called the Distractions with a Y,
okay.
DYS. And we were a three-piece, and the drummer sang, and we did tons of Police songs, and we did Heat of the Moment. We did all sorts of commercial stuff. And these guys could play, man. Like when I say we did the Police, we sounded like the Police. Like, wow. So the drummer, not me, but the drummer and the guitar player could both play well. We do Hendrix songs. The guitar player would play with his teeth.
Wow.
And we would do keggers, as they call them. We would play these backyard parties and kill. So yeah. And then that band went on. We tried to branch out and play weddings and stuff.
Uh-huh.
We did a demo, and we got a manager, and she hooked us up with Archie Bell from Archie Bell and the Drells, who produced a demo of us doing covers in a studio that was in a motel room.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Amazing.
Which is a story I could tell too often, but
oh no, it's killer.
Yeah. So anyway, after high school, I left that band, and basically I put down the bass, and I was like, okay, if I end up in a band, I just want to say too, playing all those Police songs, I realized Sting is very, very big influence on my playing, like just in the pocket and solid and not a lot of notes, playing low.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Anyway, after that, I put down the bass, and I thought, like, well, if I end up in something, if some promising comes along, I'll do it.
Right.
And then I became, I started writing. So I became a journalist in Houston. I was a music editor for our local weekly paper. Every town had one. It was called Public News. And I thought that's what I would do. So this takes us to the mid 80s going into the later 80s. And so I was like, I get to interview Sonic Youth, and I get free Dinosaur Jr. records.
Right.
And I
Hog heaven.
interviewed Buck Owens. Yeah, no, I was like, I get in free these places. The local bands hate me because I pan them. I thought that's just what I would do. And basically I met Kim from the Muffs. We had met on the road. It wasn't a romantic thing, but we met her band, the Pandoras, came through town, and we met. And then my brother lived in Southern California. I came out here and stayed a month, solidified our friendship. That would be 86. And we stayed friends until, and kept in touch, sent each other packages, called each other on the phone.
Yeah.
I don't mean to sound like every documentary that we talk about in the series, but it's pre-internet, this is pre.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It's real. We can't help it. We can't help it.
Another thing, every documentary. And then this happened. Nirvana. Anyway, me and Kim became friends, and I moved out here. And what happened, and I don't talk about this too often, the Lazy Cowgirls, a great band that was around.
Oh, yeah.
The rhythm section quit on the road. And I was like, I said to Kim and our best friends, Melanie and her husband, Larry Hardy, who does In the Red Records now.
Mm-hmm.
It's all intertwined. I was like, should I pick up the bass again and try it for the Lazy Cowgirls? And everybody's like, yeah. So I did that. And basically the whole process of me auditioning, having a physical audition for that band went like months, like a couple of months.
Wow.
Pat. I love Pat Todd. He still does it. He's still great.
Yeah.
We're very meticulous. We had this we had these on the phone interviews, and then I met him and Doug, the guitar player, at a restaurant, and we had an interview. And then
wow.
So by the time it came to them giving me 5 songs and practice, Kim left the Pandoras.
Mm-hmm.
And Melanie had left the Pandoras a month before that. Kim had all these songs, and she's like, we should have our own band. So by the time I physically auditioned for Lazy Cowgirls, we'd formed the Muffs, pretty much.
Amazing.
So I tried out for the Cowgirls, and then I got the call. Yeah, we're going to keep looking for somebody else.
Well, then what was the first original Muff song that you played? Do you remember?
Oh my God. Well, I did play on a couple of Kim had one of those 4-track demo things. I'm not technically savvy, but recording on a cassette, a 4-track, she had one of those things. So she was always writing songs. So she had a bunch of songs ready to go. And the first thing I don't remember live what we played, but I do remember playing bass on a song called Don't Waste Another Day, which didn't end up on a record, but I think it came out as a bonus track when our first album got reissued. I could be wrong on that, but that's what I remember. But yeah, we had this initial batch of songs ready to go.
That's much better than my first bass playing song. An original, well, I had 2. I was in a band called Death Midget, and we had 2 songs. And this is like Mystic Records. Like we were on a Mystic Records comp. So you know where we're coming from. 1986. Monkeys Make the Best Pets. And the second song was Urination, spelled like urination. And then I'm a Nation. Like it was like a parody song, but it was also a unity song.
Yes,
so it was like, so if you like 7 Seconds, you'll like this song. And if you don't, and you like the Meatmen, then you'll like it because of that. Just such, oh my God, so naive. It's so incredible.
That was the era, in the Red Cross documentary. Yes. Thurston Moore has a great quote where he's talking about Teen Babes in Monsanto, their record. He's like, it was so different, that title, when all these hardcore bands had titles like Fight to Unite.
I remember the confusion. Yeah, I mean, you do too. Like, Rollins has grown his hair out, and Red Cross are coming through, and you're like, nah. The people were just like, they play like covers, and they like Kiss, and I'm just like, it's great. This scene is falling apart. Thank God there's something new. So
no, I saw Black Flag in '81 where they came through, where they had the long hair for the first time.
Yeah,
they were still a 5-piece. Des was still in the band.
Oh, amazing.
And I had punk friends then that didn't like the Ramones because they had long hair. That's mind blowing to hear at this point.
So
I know.
Great.
But I remember Black Flag came on stage, and we didn't know, and they came on stage with their long hair. They immediately just didn't like them because they had long hair. But
Yeah, I think they sounded better with long hair. I loved it. I was just like, oh my God. Because then you had
it was a damaged tour.
When Dez had that like bowl cut that was kind of long and would switch to guitar, you're like, that's a look. That's dedicated. Like, this person's getting out of the van. You know, to me, it meant more than seeing somebody with like Liberty spikes or whatever, or GBH hair. I was like, no, you know, they're
No,
going the dirtbag route. I'm into it. So,
no, and for all the shit they took, I mean, come on, they broke that ground, right? I mean,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
The band in this film, Anvil, never stopped. Like, they're not a band that went away and then people rediscovered, and then, you know, like, they're like, hey, we've got something to catapult our past. They just didn't have the groundwork to basically have, like, we had a legacy. Anvil had a very short window of semi-popularity in the underground, and then it was just they kept making record after record after record, but nobody really was listening. And, you know, a lot of stuff being self-released or on like small metal labels. The film also is complemented by two people who have been playing with them for the last 10 years. There's Glenn Five on bass and this guy Ivan Hurd on guitar. Again, it's like, it's very Spinal Tap, you know, like,
Yes.
okay, this character is very lukewarm water in this band, right?
Yes.
So they get an opportunity from a fan in Europe. This person, is it Tatiana? Is that her name?
Tatiana, I believe.
Tatiana Aragani.
Yes.
And she's like, I'm going to book a tour for you. And we're going to do Italy and Switzerland. And I didn't know this till later, but the director paid for the tour himself.
Oh,
he was like,
either. Okay.
I will get you there. Then we'll see what happens. But he was like, I can't. This is an opportunity for my favorite band, too. They're going to be playing these places and selling out all over. And it's going to be great. And we'll be able to get it. They really didn't think it was going to be as dramatic and dismal as the tour ends up being.
Yeah, there are some high points. It starts off with some high points.
It starts out high.
Yes,
which is
exactly.
Every tour I've been on in Europe. The first show is killer. I don't know if it's been your experience, but you're like, oh my God, we opened at this festival. Everyone's there. You know, they're playing a show with like Michael Schenker and Brian Robertson from Thin Lizzy and Carmen Appice from Cactus. Now I know is there, and it's so sweet. That scene where Lips is talking to the documentary filmmaker, and then all of a sudden he's just like, oh my God. I think it's somebody from Twisted Sister.
Tommy Aldridge.
Okay, it's Tommy Aldridge, right? And he runs over Tommy. Tommy. And it's so sweet. It's like he is the biggest fan.
No, they're waiting outside Ted Nugent's tent to try and say hi or whatever. No, and then it's nice that there's a scene with Michael Schenker.
Yeah.
They're actually in the room, and Michael remembers them, right? Like, remember me? I played with a dildo, which I guess good thing he's got that jars everyone's memory.
They're
right?
Yep.
No one else does that.
But it's a giant festival in Sweden, and it's successful, you know?
Yeah. They seem to go over okay. There's people there when they're playing. Yeah.
And then it's just like day 3.
Yeah.
Train is sold out.
No, just like you say about having this experience, me and you. There's always a reality check, right? You'll play the sold out show in New York City, and then you play Burlington, Vermont the next night.
Right.
And there's no one there. You know,
it's amazing. It even happened in Guided by Voices when I was in it. Like, you'd be like, oh, we can play 3 nights in New York. And then you're like, wow, they haven't cracked this area, right? You know?
Yeah.
And I remember we played a festival in Kansas, and it was Guided by Voices and Spoon opening. And there were 2 stages, and Snoop Dogg was on the other stage, and Galactic, I think their jam band, was on the other.
Yeah.
And we were on this other giant stage in this empty field with like 11, 12, I'm not kidding, like 20 people max, just kind of like with their hands rested on the edge of the stage. And I remember Spoon and us were like, well, let's just put on the best show we've ever done. And we did. It was great, but it was like, this is absurd.
No, those festival shows, even the Replacements, when they reformed, when they did Coachella, they played a bad time, and apparently it was more than 10 people, but it was not that crowded when they played. You know?
It's wild. But yeah, and also the especially when you're touring overseas, you just have to rely on other people knowing like how we're going to get there. You know, the
Yes.
best way to get there, we're going to travel by bus, van, then we're going to switch here. This band's going to be opening for 4 dates, and then we're going to be over here. You know, oh, this part of the country doesn't, you know, on Sunday, there's no place to get food, you know, and, you know, just all those things that you're learning on the fly. This film really brought that back to me of just being like, okay, what do we do now? We can't get on the train to go to where we're going. So what do we do? And when that is happening at that point, it is, of course, the biggest thing that's ever happened to you in your life. And you also feel like, I'm never going to get out of it. Like, we'll never figure it out. It just seems the obstacle seems so vast. At least that was my experience.
No. And as you see in the film, you're also carrying all that equipment.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You're not, but yeah, when that happens and you're so far from home too, like you know, it really is it's dark.
Yeah.
It can get dark.
And you know, the scene where they show up late because they're confused about how to get there. And the camera crew are already there, and the promoter's freaking out. And he's like, you know, this is bullshit. You know, they should be here by now. They get there, they load in, they do their show, and then they're like, you're not getting paid. And then, you know, Lips is like physical altercation with the promoter, throwing him against the wall. And meanwhile, like, Rob is outside, just mellow as always. Like, he doesn't show too much emotion, and he's just like, yeah, this is not good. You know, he's just...
No, true. With his shirt open.
Yes,
he's
of course.
Yes. Yeah, it's the first time we see Lips, his temper.
Yes.
Because we have not seen that at this point in the film. And yeah, I just want to add a story. I don't mean to name drop here, Chris.
This is what it's all about, baby.
I won't say we're close friends, but I'm acquaintances with Jake Burns from Stiff Little Fingers. He told me a story that when the pandemic broke out, you know, when the lockdown happened and like when it just came down and people were trying to get home.
Yeah.
Places, right? Stiff Little Fingers was in wherever they were, Europe, England, somewhere. And, you know, long lines at the ticket, but, you know, you can imagine everybody's
right
trying to get home. He said in front of them was Anvil trying to work out their travel plans to get home, and it was not working out. And he just thought this is the most Anvil thing ever.
Wow.
So
if I saw an Anvil in the wild, I would freak out too. And it would actually probably be like, hey, whatever this future pandemic thing is happening, we're going to be okay. I just saw Anvil. It's a sign.
No.
It's like,
things can get worse.
Yes. Did you ever play shows where you got like ripped off by a promoter?
You know, we were pretty lucky in that respect. And like, now we did 2 full tours of Europe, but that last time we did that was in 1995. So after that, it was like, you know, the later fly-in years. So we would just do Spain, you know what I mean? Or we just do Italy.
Right.
That said, it's sad. We never made it back to England or Holland or Germany or any of these places. But yeah, and when we were doing those tours, we were on the major label and we were taking tour support. So yeah, about, you know, I'm going to sound like a baby to people, but yeah, we were not the kind of band that slept on people's floors, and it wouldn't have been good for our band, to be honest.
No, like I mean, I get it.
We started routing. We were talking about playing, you know, gigs where nobody's there.
Yeah.
We started telling our booking agent, look, New Orleans to Atlanta, like nothing in between, like no Florida, you know, like, you know, we started trying to make, and of course you have to play some places that aren't great.
No, but you play where you're wanted, and you're like, I mean, that's the thing. There's a point where you're like, we can't conquer the world, right?
Yes.
You know, like we tried a little bit, and now we're just being realistic, you know?
Yeah, no. And in our band, we did this weird kind of high powered gig, like live set too, right? Like, and it just, you know, when it went over great. But you know, when you're not, I don't want to compare us to the Doors, but you know, there's nights where you're not connecting, right? And it's just, That was not good for our morale.
No, when we played Europe, my band in the mid-90s, it was just an amazing trip, like in retrospect. But it was so weird.
Yeah.
We'd drive into a town, Okalunga, and it would say, live tonight, American music. And we were the first band from America to play this village, right?
Wow.
And it was a biker bar where like they've made boar for you, and like everyone's excited, and we're like, how many Nazareth songs do we know? Do you know any T-Rex? Like we're like pulling our thing together.
Yes.
We're like, I don't think our like loud indie rock is gonna go over tonight. We were just protecting ourselves, right? Because you looked out and you're like, these are shit kickers, right? And there was another thing in the film that resonated where they're playing this thing called the Monsters of Transylvania, and capacity of 10,000 and attendance of 174, put on by a father-son promoter team. We had a show that was a father and son promoter team. And again, it was like, I don't think we saw any money, but it was like, it was the mayor of the town and his son put on the show in the like local village hall. And the only thing I remember is that the opening band had a bucket of homemade, vodka, moonshine, whatever, and with a ladle in it. And they were just drinking out of this thing with the ladle and then punching each other on stage as part of their show. And I'm like, well, not a great show, but I did see this. I'm in the middle of nowhere. Where are we going next?
No, that is the plus on touring these out of the way places. Yeah, you do encounter some opening acts that are yeah, God love them. Yeah, in all these countries, Japan, true believers.
But basically, they're done. People in the crowd, like a lawyer shows up and is like, "You have a shit manager. You should be playing to thousands of people." And everything from, you said there were going to be posters. They're like,
yeah.
And the guitar player is hooking up with the manager now.
Yes, yes, which is a Spinal Tap thing coming true there.
Yeah,
yes.
And then Rob is like deciding not to wear shirts anymore on the train station. He's just wearing his pants, and it's like everything. It's like, this is real. These are how they are, and I do love that, again, that the filmmaker knew this about them, but it's never feels like it's played up or done for laughs. It was, in a way, it's like, no, this is just, he's not going to wear a shirt on the train station. It's just, that's the way it is. Have you seen this band yet? He doesn't want to have clothes on.
Yeah. Well, he looks all right without a shirt.
Yeah,
I gotta
totally.
say, but I mean, that's just because that's the great thing about the filmmaker having this pass with them, right? Though they're comfortable with him, they're not playing for the cameras. Like,
no,
there's only one scene where people are playing to the cameras, and that's the scene where Lips is doing the phone, trying to work the job as the phone operator.
Yes, at the call center to make money.
And all the guys, it's all the people in the background, it's way over the top.
Yeah,
overacting. Speaking of that, we should also mention their super fans, Mad Dog, and
oh my god,
and
their hometown kid, the hometown fans.
The other guy's got the better name, Mad Dog, and Cut Loose.
Yes, who can drink their beer through their nose.
Yes, what a great act. They're super fans. They say they've been to 300 Anvil shows. They and I believe them.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, great characters in the film. Oh, also Rob's sister, Droid, is what she goes by.
Yes. yeah. It's
as far as our cast of characters and weird names and everything. Yeah, Droid. And Droid is very matter of fact too. She's
not into it.
No, at the end she's like, "Come on, guys, get with it. This is a joke." She literally says, "This is a joke."
Yeah, where Lips is part of his family. They feel for him. They're like, our parents were not supportive of him, and his sister, eventually is like helping them, do their next chapter in their thing, because basically they come back from tour, no money, no record companies show up, nothing happened that they thought they could, and they're back to their jobs, and Lips is so positive. He's like, I don't regret it. I'm grateful. It was great.
No, and he adds like, did things go wrong? Things went drastically wrong, but at least there was a tour for it to go wrong on. It's one of the there are several moments that bring tears to my eyes, literal tears to my eyes in this film, and that's one of them. Like Lips, both of these guys, they come out with some. They might not be the most cleverly worded quotes or whatever, but they're beautiful.
They're so heartfelt. Like
Yeah.
they are lifers, and they have a bond since they were children.
Yeah. And it's clear.
In friendship and music. And as you know, in music, it's hard. There's always, the dynamics are going to be interesting. There's always going to be someone who's going to be more passionate and somebody who's going to be a little more checked out. And, it's just the dynamics of collaboration. Everybody can't be on the same thing. And it's definite that Lips, if he wasn't in the band wouldn't exist anymore. Rob would be playing with other people. He'd be a drummer, but he wouldn't have somebody being like, we need to make another record and we need to do this. I mean, the fact that they made a record every other year, Into the Void, is Lips being like, we got to do it. The songs are good. It's time. It's been too long. And you need someone like that. And a lot of their frustration with each other also comes from the dynamic of Lips being like, we need to do it.
Yes. And beating their heads against the wall a lot of time. Yeah. But Rob believes in Lips, right? Like, I mean, and that's just, I guess that goes back to just the friendship thing and the love story.
There's a scene where Lips is really being super emotional at the table and just being like, I'm alone. Like, like nobody really cares like about how Lips is doing, and I'm the one who's doing all this. I'm the one who's making sure everything is going right. He's crying, and Rob's
and it's
crying.
Always like, yeah. And it's always like, we got to do this now, man. And like, they were probably like that on every one of those 19 records. They probably had the same, even when they were younger, like, we got to make this happen now. And then,
yeah. And again, they have an opportunity. One of their, I think it was Metal on Metal, was produced by a pretty famous producer, Chris Tsangarides.
I don't know how to say his last name either.
Tsangarides. He produced like Thin Lizzy and Judas Priest. They get the demos to him, and he's into it. He's like, yeah, come over. Let's make a record over in the UK. 12,000 pounds, which is a lot for Anvil, but for a producer like him, he's definitely probably cutting his rate,
Absolutely.
So that's when, Lips is trying to work at a call center that, Mad Dog runs so that he can do it. And it's like, you just realize he's too sweet. Like, as manic as Lips is and passionate, he can't lie to people on the phone. He can't do that. He's too sweet. And so, his sister ends up lending them the money to go make the record. Lips' sister.
Yes.
I
mean, also this would have been like, let's just say 06, 07. I don't know when this would have been, but you're still making records analog, a lot of bands at that point too. So that's hence the 12 grand was probably cheap. It was probably very cheap.
Yeah, no, they're recording the tape, and they go over to make the record, and then the fighting starts, and Rob basically is like, he quits, partway through the recording. He's just like, I'm done, like, just can't do this anymore. Well, and also Lips is on him, because Lips is like, he doesn't want to settle for a half-ass take. He wants it to be amazing. And he's like, if it's not, he's going to tell you, but he doesn't have the tact to tell you.
Yes. No. And like you say, Rob, during this fighting, Rob doesn't lose it on any of these scenes, right? Even when he's upset, he's very, while Lips is ranting at him, he's just like, I quit, man. It's over.
Yeah, it's a little spooky because he's so stone-faced and stoic, but it does give off energy like if he was a different person, he could like hit Lips because of how intense Lip and in his face Lips is being. Like, this is how this is how people snap. You know, they're just there and they're just in their head and there's no emotion on their face. And the other person is full of it, of emotion and pushing.
I never thought about that. Yeah. Rob could totally take Lips. Like, come on.
Yeah. And he never does. He's just like, no, he's just like, they have a complicated friendship, you know?
Yeah.
And we're seeing it for the first time.
Yeah.
They've obviously been through this over and over again. And so when Lips comes in and is apologizing to him, it's like, at first it's kind of a half apology, you know, it's more explaining like, well, I come from a place of love and passion and all this stuff. And, you know, this guy lives to hurt me and I'm tired of being the fall guy. But then he kind of tires himself out and the real emotions come out about why this matters and why they need to be doing this. And it's quite a beautiful scene.
No, it is. And the producer has great people skills too, because he's just like, come on, guys. Like, he doesn't get involved and he's, okay, these guys, it gets emotional. We're making a record. And they come back together because, you know, it comes to the point where Lips is like, we got to hire another drummer.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's super scary too, because like they're not at home. Like, but you're right. The producer is very saintly in this. Like, he's ready to make a great record. He thinks the songs are great. He seems like a good guy, you know, like you're a little spooked when they're going to do this. Like, oh no, what I've seen in this movie, it's going to be a shit studio with a guy who's like, just not there. Right. He's checked out. He needs 12,000 pounds right now. And it's not that case at all. They're making a legitimate metal record in the UK.
No, and his studio is a very nice. It's beautiful. It's a nice studio. They're in good surroundings. When they're pissed off, you see Rob walking outside in this beautiful, grassy whatever, like, you know. And then when they make up, it leads to that beautiful scene where they go to Stonehenge.
I know.
And there's there are scenes to come in this too, where you see Rob and Lips. No words need to be spoken. You just see them smiling at each other.
Yeah.
Even like embracing sometimes. Just around these scenes, I'm getting the chills talking about it.
Yeah, it's lovely. Yeah, and again, I think the reason this film is so good is, there's a lot of humor in it due to the nature of being in metal and, you know, kind of like the style of dress maybe, or what the song lyrics are about. But again, I think you made a really good point. It's a relationship movie, you know?
Yeah.
It could have been a playwright and a screenwriter. It could have been a couple, you know, a married couple. It could be so many things. And I just felt that they were very vulnerable in the film in a way that when you first see them playing guitar with a dildo, that you're not going to necessarily get some heart, you know. You're going to get some laughs and it's going to be tragic. Okay, I see it all. But I really find that the scenes where they are together and they're talking about, this is why we're still here, incredibly moving.
Yeah, no, that's, as this film progresses, it becomes the beautiful love story. I saw an interview with the filmmaker where he said at one of the festival screenings that a lady bought some merch and she's like, I don't like the music. I just want to help.
Yeah.
You know, and that's because she fell in love with these guys and what they were doing, what they were trying to do.
Yeah, it's amazing. The director said they're the band that goes out and talks to their fans. You know, like after a show, they are there and they are personable and they answer questions and they get excited. And that's like, and again, you know, they have a very DIY spirit to what they do, you know, that has kind of more in common with like what I've done, you know what I mean, than you would give credit for a band that does this genre.
No, absolutely. I mean, some of the gigs, that they're doing. I mean, let's face it, they're playing on the floor and play some of those places, and they're doing it because they love doing it.
Yeah, and this is a part of the film that's also really interesting because you're still hopeful, right? They've made this record.
Yes.
We haven't
with
heard
their old producer. Yeah.
This is it. And, you know, they go to LA nobody bites after 2 weeks. You realize they are really out of step genre-wise with a recording industry that's like, what are you? And there's that really amazing scene where they go to EMI Canada and they're put into a room with this guy who's an A&R guy.
Who seems nice, right? He does not seem, yeah.
But it really did creep me out that he puts it on, 30 seconds later he stops it, and he's like, okay, all right. And I'm just like, wow, like you didn't even make it through the song. And he's being nice still.
He is.
But he's like, I got it. Oh, cool. I'll keep it. And you're just like, oh my God. It's
and
really...
he's talking about how the market changed and all that. And to be fair, he's right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's already uncomfortable to listen to somebody's music, right? They're like, oh, I'm going to play my record for you and we're going to sit in the room and I want to get your reaction.
Yeah.
But this is somebody whose dream is so big and hinging on a record label, and he's looking at the person expecting they're gonna have their mind blow, their mouth will open and they're just gonna be in awe of like, where have you been? This is you're here, thank God, let's do it. It's something again that in a lot of ways I feel like on any level we've all had that thing where you're like, oh, the interview did not go well, right? Like I'm feeling this already 30 seconds into this,
like today, Chris, for me. Yes, exactly.
But you know what I mean? Like you can get the sense you're like, oh shit, okay, I'm not what they want here.
No, I absolutely. I that's the same feeling I got at the later gigs the Muffs would do, where they're turning the house into the dance club afterwards.
Oh yeah.
And we're walking out, and the gig went fine. There were people there, but you walk out, and there's a line around the block.
Absolutely.
Of kids, and just I you know what I mean? It's not a great feeling.
That was, again, in Europe was the first time I ever saw that. We were playing Northern Italy. I thought this place was pretty amazing. They had a dedicated strobe light death metal room over down the hall. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of filled with like 50 people. We're playing to 30 to 40 people. But then in the back, in the darkness, are all these kids waiting for this live music to stop so that they can dance. Yeah. And you're like, oh, they won't even come into the light to watch us. They are like waiting for the changeover. And I'd never seen that before. And then, you end up, it started being kind of a cultural thing. Yeah.
You really feel over the hill at age 50. Yeah. No. It's a bad feeling. I'm glad you can. Well, I'm not glad you can relate, but
again, that was like decades ago. But again, all of this stuff resonates with me. Label things, van things, management things. And at the same time, what works for them? Selling the record directly, which is again they figured out. They're like, we're selling direct to the fans. We're DIY. We're putting it in the envelopes. People know where to get it, and it works for them.
Which is what a lot of bands do now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and it's incredible. And I don't know much about like independent metal right now or the underground, but I'm assuming it's very similar. Like it's not even a genre thing; it's a practicality thing. You can't wait for someone to have the belief in you. You just have to do it yourself.
Yeah. No. All these musics are going to continue in whatever capacity it is. But metal is one of those genres which it's always going to be around. And there's bands I hear of that I've never heard of that are playing 1,000 to 1,000 people.
Right.
My it's weird to say girlfriend at my age because we are engaged. My fiance's son is into that stuff, and he went and saw a band, Society's Last Breath or something like that.
Yeah,
Humanity's Last Breath. Never heard of them. And I look them up, and they play 1,000 to 1,500 seaters, and the guy sings lower and growlier than any voice I've ever heard in metal. Yes. And he wears a cloak, and metal's always going to have its audience.
Yes, there'll be more metal than like Fabulous Poodle kind of bands. So,
Oh, ouch. I have Fabius Poodle stuff all over this room, Chris. It's one of my favorite bands. I'm serious.
but the film is like, again, like Spinal Tap, it's like big in Japan, you know?
Yeah.
And they go to Tokyo. Throughout the film, there are people telling them, you need to go back to Japan and play. You're respected there. And you're excited for them. They're doing it. Again, borrow money to go do this thing. But yeah, it just, when they land, it just doesn't go the way they expect.
Yeah. They find, they're of course they're ecstatic when they get the offer, right? Oh, we're going to Japan, right? And then, yeah, they land and they find out that they're playing first at a festival and they're on at 11:30 a.m.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, man.
And a 20,000 capacity
Yes,
arena.
yes. Lips, that's a great quote. I played to 5 people in a 2,000 seat capacity room. It's not a good feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, and that feeling of them waiting backstage, and you look at the when you see their name up there and the time next to it, you're just like,
yeah,
oh shit, like,
no, because you don't see any other bands you recognize
playing
after them, right? In the shot we're looking at, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know who headlined that thing, but no, and you see the room, and it is big. It does hold 20,000 people.
They're feeling what they felt for a long time at this point. They're just, you can just see it. They're like, all right, we're here in another country. We dreamed it, and this is the reality.
Yeah, and it's really, well done the way it's laid out. We see them at sound check. They're happy at sound check, and then they go backstage. There's what's his name, 5, warming up on his bass.
Yeah,
I should have done that more.
Yeah, you should have been more like 5. Come on.
Yeah, I know, right? That's
right.
I'd go on coal. No, and then it's just we're walking behind them like a wrestler, as they're walking to all these halls and the ramp to get on the stage, and then
like Spinal Tap.
And with them, we see it's revealed that the place is filled, and Anvil goes on and does their thing, and Lips plays with the vibrator, and they do metal on metal.
It's amazing. And it's so sweet. He immediately gets off the stage and is in the audience with his guitar.
Which is the biggest smile you've ever seen. Yes.
People are freaking out in the audience. He's freaking out. And he looks back at Rob, and it's like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah. And, it makes you realize, like, oh, God, yeah, music is so fantastic, right? To either watch it or play it, just the joy and vibration it can bring out. It's just, it's electrifying. And you realize these guys are like, this is why we do it. Whether there's, and they would do it. They would still play great if there are 20 people in this. This is not a band.
No, they would. Yes.
They do not show their emotions on stage if things are going bad. They put their head down and they rock, whether people are there or not, which is impressive. And I've been in bands where people can't do that. I've seen, I remember seeing Sebadoh on their first tour, and no one was there. And it was like, oh my God, this is the most uncomfortable 40 minutes I've ever spent with a band. Like, they're miserable. They're letting us know they're miserable. No one's happy. Okay. Anvil does not do that.
No, and that's the right way to do it. I know it's hard sometimes when you're in that position, but that's the way to do it, right? The people that came, and whether it's 10 or 20,000, I mean, they paid and they want to see you. And they don't want to be bummed out, like you say.
Yeah, it's amazing. And a couple other cool things happened, that I found out later. One is that during this performance in Japan, they had the director got to play drums. For one of the songs. And it's so great. And he's really good. Like, he's in heaven because he's playing in Japan, playing his favorite band, Anvil, in this film that he's been making. Because they're just like, hey, we're making this film, and, the director here, we're going to get him up here. So he just kind of puts down his stuff and goes on. It's so cool. And,
that is cool.
And the other thing I found was a quote where Lips said that he ran to one of his heroes, Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull, at Heathrow Airport. And Ian Anderson told him that the movie had completely inspired him to keep playing music. And he said he kept thanking me for all the inspiration that Anvil gave to him. And he says, I mean, this is Ian Anderson from Jethro Tull. How cool is that?
No, that's
and
incredible.
that is Lips through and through. He's just like, wow.
Yeah. No, that is incredible. And then, yeah, that triumphant live scene leads us to like one of the most beautiful endings of I'm going to say any movie. Like I really, there's another, I always cry at the end of Willy Wonka, and the original, of course. When he says, I'm giving it to you, the chocolate factory, that always gets me. And in this film, so we see Lips and Rob post show, because they're sweaty almost still, right? Rob's got his open shirt, like they're wearing the same stuff.
Yeah.
And they're going to the center of Tokyo, it's with all the stuff around, and that quote of Lips, man, where he's just like, another thing that always gets me is Bruce Springsteen's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction speech to the E Street Band. If you've never seen that, watch it. Being a band member, it's really beautiful. And again, they're together, they're smiling, they're looking up at all this stuff, and we hear this beautiful quote from Lips where he's just like, life is about the choices you make, the people you're with, the people you surround yourself with, the places you go. So great. And those guys are just smiling. They're hugging each other. And then he says, look, Godzilla, cut to the end. Again, that beautiful background music is playing too, and which really enhances that scene.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
I've seen this film so many times. I think I went into it because you look at the cover or the poster and you're like, oh my God, look at these maniacs, right?
No, and the pull quotes are like hilarious.
Right.
And, again, the Spinal Tap. Yeah.
Right. So you don't expect to be like, these guys are
crying
rad.
Yeah,
like, I love them.
Yeah.
Like, they're good people.
Yes.
These are not shits, man. These are good people. And it's a film about two lovely musicians, lifers.
Absolutely. And still doing it, we should say.
Yes, absolutely. I know. Incredible.
Yeah. 15 years later, I don't know. Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
Like in this, they're like, we're in our 50s and now they're not.
Yeah.
They
probably have a new record. I know they re-released the film a couple of years ago.
Well, and also we need to say they did record Thumb Hang.
Yes.
They do go and record it for their next record. They're like, it does end up on the record.
Yes. So during the credits, I don't know there's got to be a proper term for that, where they have like the captions for things like that. Where it says Anvil still recording and blah blah blah, just released their work on their next record, whatever it said at the time, and then they recorded Thumb Hang for the.
It's beautiful, like
because we all know Thumb Hang. Yeah, that scene is gonna just resonate. Yeah.
And that I'm amazed that in that line, when they're trying to get home, during the pre-pandemic, that they weren't like, we wrote Thumb Hang, right?
Yeah.
You know Thumb Hang, right? Come on. But I could imagine that they would be like, I can imagine Lips taking the answer of being like, I'm sorry, sir, we can't help you. There's nothing, we're doing our best. And being like, oh, I know. Yeah, right. Like, he's not the guy who's going to be like,
exactly. Yeah, no.
This is an outrage. Like, I'm a musician. I need to be somewhere. People are expecting me. He's not going to pull that.
One of those scenes hit the internet where people are turning over tables and stuff at the airport. Yeah.
You'd be lucky to have this band practicing next to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they'd come over and be like, hey, we're going to start soon. Is it okay? So God bless him, man. Yeah. Amazing.
Sorry, we went a little long.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Here's Thumb Hang CDR for you.
Thumb Hang. I just want to add that, like, getting to know Rob Reiner, the scene with him and his artwork.
Oh God, yes.
Like he's I'm not I'm not the most articulate person either, but just him looking at the art and just the way he's looking at it and the way he's describing it's just wonderful. Like,
Yeah.
this one's called Left Behind, and it is his drum set. It's like, this is what's left behind when I'm not,
And he's like, I like empty spaces. I like,
Yeah.
empty streets. And he's really quite articulate about, how he makes his art and what he does. And you're caught up in the poignancy of it, right?
Yes,
And then he
yes,
turns
yes.
the corner and he's like,
We walk down the staircase,
Yes.
to the attic. Yep. And then there he stops, turns around, expressionless. And what we see is a painting of a German toilet bowl with shit and piss in it.
yeah, yes, very textured.
Yes. He made it textured. You can touch it. It's like carpet texture
Yeah,
or something, as
yeah.
far as I can tell.
Oh,
And then he just comments, I figured a good place for it. The wife didn't want it in the living room.
right. It's like, I think if people are the subject of a documentary, yeah, you do have sides, right? And
That one, the same scene, right? We see both sides.
yeah.
And that painting is called Grand Finale, by the way.
Yes. And he's not playing it for laughs, right? He's
No,
like,
no.
this is equal to these amazing street scenes that I've painted. This is the same weight. And I'm not,
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Great scene.
Ronnie, it's been so good to see you and to meet you. I'm a longtime fan. Again, we were talking before we came on. We've been in rooms together, but I don't know if we got to talk, but I know we've been in a lot of the same spaces together. It's kind of funny that we're finally here.
We have. We're on the same label, kind of,
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah.
We had a Sub Pop single,
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Well, and you said you were working at Amoeba when GBV played there. And like,
That's
I
right.
know Cheryl for Omnivore. It's like, again,
Yep.
small worlds, but it's so good to see you.
Yes.
Well, at the end of every episode, I ask the same question, but I tailor it depending on what we're talking about. So on a scale from 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest, how many dildo bass guitar solos do you give this film? A one vibrator solo to a 10.
Can I count them slowly off like that?
Yes,
I like
absolutely.
that. No, I'm gonna. No, I don't want to give anything a 10 just because I have to leave that open. But I do give this film a solid 9 just because of all the cylinders that it fires on, to use a cliche.
Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, it's poignant, it's beautiful. I love the characters. They're likable. All the scenes, fit. I just think it's a lovely film. And like I try to tell everyone that's turned off to watching a documentary about a metal band, like, this really is just a great film, and you'll love it if you actually take the time to do it.
And it is so rewatchable. Like,
it really is.
It is a really amazingly well put together documentary.
Yeah, I never get sick of it. I mean, I before the re-release, came out on Blu-ray again and stuff. I hadn't seen it in many years, but it's one of those things. I knew every scene, and in preparation for this, I watched it twice yesterday. Twice in one day.
Yeah.
So
it's killer. I did the same thing. I watched it, and then I was like, I'm watching the commentary right now while it's fresh. Because I'm
going to do that right now.
Yeah, and that, I tell you, that is not necessarily the case for every film. So I'm so glad you picked it. People have been asking when this film was going to show up. So thank you again for picking it.
Yes, shame on all your previous guests for not picking this. But I'm glad it was still available. I know people expect me to pick Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park.
Well, that's still on the table. And, did you watch Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park when it was on originally?
I did.
Yeah, me too. So we'll get together and talk about that. So good to see you. Thanks so much, Ronnie.
No, you too. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Revolutions Per Movie. We release new episodes every Thursday on your favorite podcast app, and additional bonus episodes every Sunday on our Patreon. The show is a completely independent affair, so the best way to support the show is through our Patreon at patreon.com/revolutionspermovie, where you can get weekly bonus episodes and shows, exclusive limited edition flexi discs and records and CDs featuring guests that have appeared on the show, and other exclusive goods sent to you just for joining. You can follow us on social media at Revolutions Per Movie, and also find out more information about our various guests in the episode show notes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week. Bye!